All right, we got Jeff here on the phone. Jeff, if you could you take us back through all your encounters and just tell us how they all went down?
Okay. Uh, well, it all started off when I was about 8 years old. Um, Town we live in was a small town in Norwood. Um, and the school we went to was probably about a good quarter mile away. But um, I always had to walk my sister back and forth to school. It was just my duty as her brother, So mom and dad bestowed that on me, at a young age. So um, I typically just got her ready for school with me in the morning, fed her, took her to school, and I brought her home. And that was every day um, until we probably in about the fifth grade. Um, we always took Highland Avenue, which was the top. And on the right side of the street, there was a place called Indian Mound. And these woods went all the way from the school all the way back down probably 2 miles to the end of Norwood on the backside. And then they wrapped all the way around. But the right side of the street was pretty much that spot was Indian burial grounds for Indians, that had died in battle or whatnot back in the day. Everybody looked at that land like, it was sacred. When they built Norwood, they left that untouched. But on the very top of Indian Mound, I'd heard rumors um, that they did actually build some houses on some of those burial sites, and you know, um, reburied those Indians down at the lower part on Highland Avenue. So one day, I'm walking my sister home from school. It's probably early spring. Everything's just starting to bloom, so the woods are still kind of bare. We're about a half block from my house on Highland. Get ready to make the turn to Linden Avenue when from behind me, a big rock crashes into the street. And I'm thinking at this point, it just startled me, startled my sister. I look back real quick. I'm thinking this, one of the bully kids had a lot of bullies where we grew up. That's why we always took that way anyway, Highland Avenue. So I look back thinking it's, a kid, a bully, and there was nothing there, you know. Um, and then So I turn around and I tell my sister, I don't know what that was. Did you see anything? And she's like, no. So we continue to make our walk down towards the house. All of a sudden, I hear a big whoop and like a snort, and then another rock crashes into the street. That's the same size rock. This time we jumped, and I look back. This time I'm not looking to the street because I know, I heard what I heard. So I'm looking to the woods. So I look into the woods, and there's an opening um, that takes you into the woods and up to the upper part uh, of Highland Avenue into Indian Mound and um, the park that sits up top there. And this park wraps all the way around to a place called Linder Park and Paradise Pond. And I looked at this opening and I see something, and it's standing behind two trees and it's shaking them, and it's making whooping sounds, and snorting, and it's moving really quickly, basically left to right, and it's shaking the trees, little tiny trees, like saplings, a little bit bigger, but just like shaking them like they weren't nothing, and I couldn't see, that part of the woods, even when the sun was on it, it was kind of dim, shady all through there. But I did see the outline of this thing, and it was immense. It was huge. I mean, I'm talking 700-800 pounds. This thing was big, black and grayish hair, you know, wasn't matted. It was like layered. Uh, you could see the outline of the body and the muscles. It was intense, like, but it was the way that this thing moved. It was crazy. It was moving defensively, almost methodically, like to not be seen. But yet, you know, um, it was clearly, upset that we were there. I guess, we come through there at the wrong place at the wrong time, and this thing must have been looking for a new place to travel. And I guess that's how that incident went down. Well, after that time that second one hit, I mean, this thing shaking the trees so bad, and it just got my sister scared to death. I'd turn around and I'd tell her, bolt, run now, and we run. We take off. We hit the corner. We turn. We run down to our house on the lower part of Linden, and I run busting through the door. Mom, you got to call the cops. You got to call the cops right now. There is something up on any mound, and it's throwing it threw rocks at us. And, we were afraid it was going to hurt another kid come down through there. This thing was clearly upset, pissed off. Like I said, in the beginning, I was thinking a bully, a kid coming home from school, but this wasn't the fact. This was something in the woods. And even when that first rock hit, and I didn't see nothing, then the second one come with the whoop and the snort, and then they continued. When I'm looking at this thing, I'm trying to, really at that time that I'm checking this thing out, I am looking to see, okay, this thing, it looks like a monster. It's pretty wicked looking. It's not human. I was hoping that it would be, a bigger kid, one of the bullies, throwing rocks from the woods, but that was not the case. These rocks were big, and they were made of asphalt. So I guess when they hit, they busted, and that's what really startled us. When that second one hit, it broke, and debris shot off from that, that rock, asphalt, whatever it was. I think it was asphalt mixed, but when it hit, it shattered, and it busted everywhere, pieces of it, and that made my sister jump. So we were afraid this thing was going to hurt somebody else. I mean, this thing really had me scared, like it wanted to hurt, one of us. And I remember making that turn. I thought, if this thing really wanted to get us, there's no way in hell we're going to make it to the house before this thing snatches one of us up. And like I said, I get to the house and I tell my mom, call the cops, and she's looking at us like we're crazy. Just two kids telling us, a monster story, and tells us to go back in our room, do homework, and get it done and out the way. And that was the end of that. But I remember just clearly being so startled, and upset that she didn't believe us. We weren't crying wolf. You can't unsee what you see, even at that age. I remember that night being scared to death, thinking, well, what if this thing finds its way to our back window and it snatches me or my sister up, while we're sleeping? Like, there was no sleep that night. That's how bad this thing spooked me. I mean, it was that scary. Um, and then after that, we walked straight up the bottom side of Linden Avenue, never went up to Highland, and took the top no more. Later in life, I would go through there, but I would always be on defense, because I always felt like there were eyes on me. You know what I mean? But at that time, looking back on it now, I think this thing was just trying to find its way through. It was traveling and trying to find its way through town. But the way our town was built, it was kind of weird. The railroad tracks went all the way through the middle of town, and then you had woods all the way around. But that was the only way you were going to get out of that town, would be to go, in that circular wooded area. Because if you went through the railroad tracks, you'd be spotted unless it was nighttime. So that was a pretty spooky event. You know what I mean? So that was the first incident that happened to me. The second one, I was a few years older, and me and a buddy were taking a break from where we locally fished to go out and try some new places out. So we went up to Lake Callan. It was up in northeastern Ohio. So we went up there. He wanted to go up and try to catch some muskie and some bass. I said, well, might as well go try something new. We'd burn out the old spot that we've been to. We've been burning them up down there left and right. So we go up there and we get a boat and we're going across, and I'm thinking, man, it's going to be a good day. We're going to burn these up. We got a boat. We get to the opposite side of the lake, and we tie on these silver spoons. We see these reeds on the bottom, the lily pads with these sticks blowing from them. They were getting banged by something down there, and whatever these fish were, they were pretty big. So we decided to throw on some flashy spoons because the water was pretty clear. And I remember telling my buddy, my best friend, don't hook me. Whatever you do, don't hook me. We're on a good spot. Let's not mess this up by, a freak accident by paying attention. The first cast, he puts this spoon right through my ear. My hat flies off into the water, and I'm hooked. I mean, this thing went all the way through my ear. So I tell him, well, we got to go. You got to take me back to the bait house. Quick, I'm bleeding. I mean, blood's just pouring out my ear. So he starts the motor, gets me back to the other side, and the guy at the bait shop comes out. He says, you guys are supposed to hook the fish, not each other. And made a joke out of it. So he said, come on in here, I'll take care of this. You guys can get back to fishing. I go in, he tells me to bite on this stick, and he takes these snips, wire cutter, and just one snap pops that hook off and slides it out and says, here you go. Does me a Band-Aid. At that time, it's starting to hurt pretty bad. So I tell, buddy, let's just go home. I'm starting to hurt, starting to hurt pretty bad. And he's like, no, why don't we stop at Tides Creek on the way home? It's a new spot. I hear there's muskie and white bass running through down there. So I agreed to go because we were pretty far out anyway, and it was still early in the day. So we decided to go ahead and go. Well, we get there, and this place is all woods. We're talking Mar, Ohio. It's just all woods, cornfields, soybean fields. Um, we get out, it's about a 700-yard hike to the creek, and it's on a fence line. And there's a big, gigantic farm, big old white house, and the guy gave him permission to fish. So we went up to there, and there's a hole up there on the back side of the farm where you can go through the Tots Creek. We climbed through there, and he wades on down. We're in there. We ain't got our waders, but we're still. It's only like 3 feet deep, so we're wading. It's pretty warm out. So he's down below me, and I'm fishing. This time, there was no forewarning on what happened on this. I was just fishing, and I remember going to throw my rooster tail to the far right side of the bank, where the woods got pretty thick in that area. And as soon as my lure hit, boom, a big rock just landed right beside me, about 8-10 feet away, and that freaked me out. I'm thinking, what the hell? So I looked down at Chris and I say, man, why'd you throw the rock at me? He said, I ain't throwing a rock at you. Are you crazy? I'm fishing. You see, I'm fishing. How would I be able to throw a rock with my hands on the pole, reeling my rooster tail in it? So I don't think nothing of it, but I'm still in the back of my mind like, what in the hell is going on? Where did this rock come from? Is there any kids in the area? Is there somebody, on the land maybe messing with us? But there was nobody out there that day. It was just me and him. It was the weekend. So the kids, they were probably home. It was still early. Like probably 8:30 when this happened. Like everybody was still probably in bed. So I went ahead and went on fishing, cast a few more times, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom, another rock hits closer to me, and it's a bigger rock, bigger splash, and it spooked me big time. When that second rock hit, I knew something was up, and I looked down to Chris, and he looked at me, and we didn't even have to say a word to each other. Boom, he knew something was up, and so did I. We looked at each other and bolted, and we're trying to get out of this creek as fast as the water will, allow us, because I had pretty decent little current in it. And then on the bank to get out was a little incline, so we're fighting the mud where the water's dripping off of us. We're breathing heavy. I mean, really trying to rush to get up out of here because that was just not natural, not normal. We finally get up to the top, jump through the hole, and we're running down towards the truck. He had old Blue Ranger. It was about 700 yards away from us. And as we're running down the fence line, he's like, what in the hell did that? What threw that rocket shoot? There is nobody here. What would throw that? What would throw that rocket shoot? And he's startled at this point. I mean, he's just tripping in defense mode, fight or flight. Like, what is going on? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have no clue. That is just not natural. And we're running down the fence line to get to this truck quick as we can. So we're almost there. And all of a sudden you hear a pack of dogs, about 8 or 10 of them, coon dogs, what they sound like to me, and they're chasing something clearly. Somebody's running something. And the first thing I thought was, man, that is kind of weird because them are coon dogs. People don't hunt coon in the day; they hunt coons at night and run up trees. So, what are these dogs chasing? Unless somebody else has, got them hunting some other kind of game. So we rushed even quicker, and get to the truck. We threw the poles in the back of the tail bed, and he gets in the driver's side. I get the passenger side, and he's so spooked he can't even get the keys in the ignition. Can't even get them in the ignition. So I grab them from him and I put them in. I started the truck. I hit the window, roll it down. And he's like, what is that? What do you think that was? It did that. I said, man, I have no clue. That was not normal. This day is in a cluster truck. It's time to go. You know what I mean? And we bolted and we never went back there after that. I mean, it was wild how that went down. No whoops, no nothing, just 2 rocks being thrown. We were being told to get up out of the area that we were in by whatever that thing was. So after that, we jumped to the third encounter. At this point, I'm grown, married, and rarely am I fishing anymore. But my uncles and my dad want to go up to this place called Tom's Mountain. It's my uncle Mike's an Army Ranger, ex-Army Ranger, and he's got a buddy he was in the service with that has some land out right next to the Miami Whitewater Forest. And on the backside of his house There's a small mountain you got to climb up to get to the lake. So they want to go up there and do some night fishing this time. For the first time ever, do some crappie fishing. And so I agree to go. And we get there. It's late September, pretty warm day. We got there a little bit, before a couple hours before dark, so we could set up everything. And this climb was hellacious. It was like it started flat, and then as you went further up the mountain, it went deeper in anglage, and like up to 90-degree, damn on near a 90-degree angle, 3/4 of the way up. And it was a fight to get up there. I mean, the only thing you could take was the basics because you weren't carrying anything else. You weren't going to get up there. So we get up to the top, and we're winded. It was a hell of a climb, like I said. I mean, we all dropped our gear. We're bent over and we're trying to get our air back. I mean, it just takes a lot out of it. It takes you about a good 20, 30 minutes to recover from that. So, our poles are already set up. So at this point, we're bass fishing. Everybody split out across the lake, pretty decent sized lake. But up on top now, 150 yards north, straight north up to the top, there's a lake too. And that's a buddy of Tom's that owns that property. You're allowed to fish it, but nobody ever did because by the time you got done climbing up to Lake 1, you were through. You weren't climbing no more to fish. You pretty much were fishing where you were at. My Uncle Mike had fished a couple times, but, nobody else really. I like Lake 1, so we're up there and we're catching them. I mean, they had some big bass in there. This place had to have been there for a while because of just the way that the size of the fish it wasn't normal, like 8-9 pound bass and 12 to 14-inch crappie, big hybrid bluegill. Like, they took care of this place. Down to the right of Lake 1, there's a slope, and then off to the left, it's all woods. Right off the bank, it's all woods. About 3 feet off, it's all woods. And the cows always stayed on the left-hand side because there was shade there. And that's where they were at on this day. They were on the left-hand side. When we get to the top, they're mooing, and they're laying down. They've already got their water. They're chilling. So they were never in our way, never bothered us. So we're up there burning them up, and then sun goes down, and I'd say probably about 12, out of nowhere, the cows get up out of nowhere. No warning or nothing. They just all get up and roll out to the right side, and they roll up the hill to Lake 2. Normally, I found out they go down the right-hand side, down the slope, and lay down by the river. But they didn't do that this night. They went up top to Lake 2. Seemed like maybe something had spooked them. I didn't, think nothing of it. Kept fishing. And about an hour later, everything shuts down, fishing slow. And we're talking, but we're talking low. And I can hear something off to the left up on the top of the ridge leading back towards Lake 2. And it's coming down towards us, but it's moving slow. It's moving slow and then stopping. Then we make a few more steps and it would stop. So I didn't think nothing of it. I thought deer. That's what it would normally be for the area where we were. So everything shuts down about 30 minutes after that. I decided to switch over to minnows to catch some crappie. There was only one lantern. That's all we had was one lantern. So I grabbed the lantern, and I'm thinking, well, as I pull these minnow buckets, I'm gonna leave them one, and I'll leave the lantern right at the turn of the lake, so that way they can see what they're doing, and I'll still be able to see what I'm doing. So I fix my pole up, and I go to roll over, and I grab the minnow bucket and the lantern. I go over to the left side, and as I put the light over on the left to where I was gonna go and fish, the exact spot where I was gonna go fish is where I put eyes on that thing. This thing was cinnamon brown. It was crouching down next to the lake with its hand in the water, like its hand was cupped like it was getting a drink of water. And I guess at the moment that I put light on it, it raised its hand slowly up out of the water, slow enough to where you could see the water drip off of it. And I'm froze at this point with this straight fear, adrenaline pumping. I can't move. But this thing's slowly raising its hand up out of the water and it's turning its head towards me at the same time, looking over its left shoulder. And as I put the light on it, I see, like I am totally spooked at this point. I put the light up a little higher uh, so I could get a full view. And this thing, as it's turning its head towards me, I can see the yellow, glaring off of it. And it's opening its mouth slowly, and it's letting out a low, curling growl like a old rabid dog. And as it's opening its mouth, I can see four canine teeth, but they're not like a wolf. They're not super sharp. They're like rounded off and worn like old teeth. They're not sharp at all. Um, and at the end, it lets out a snoot, like like it was just pissed, upset, that almost disgusted, like that it had been spotted. You know, like I said, we'd never been up there night fishing before, ever. So, I feel like we disrupted this thing's schedule. Um, it was just weird that I put the light on exactly where I was going to fish, and this thing was right there. I mean, crouched down. It was about 4 feet. Beautiful cinnamon brown color, clean. The hair wasn't matted. It was layered again. The fur was, like I said, a light cinnamon brown. Um, the head was a little coned. Not uh, not too tall. Not, I don't know. It was like maybe this thing was, looking back on it, maybe it was a juvenile. It wasn't as big as the one I had seen when I was 8 years old. This thing was probably 450, 500 pounds. So looking back on it now, I figured it was a juvenile. So, probably pretty much everything hadn't fully formed on this thing yet, but it was still an immense creature. I mean, to say the least, you know, uh, at this point, I'm in just total shock. Like, I can't believe I've got light on the thing I've got light on. And I hear my dad, slowly I come back to reality, and I hear my dad saying, "Gene, what is that? Do you see that? What is that? Do you see that?" And my uncles are saying the same thing. And this thing's looking at this point in time. This thing's looking at me a little bit. It's glaring over at me like it don't know what it wants to do. It's like a deer in headlights. It's looking at me and it's glancing back to the woods on the right hand side. I mean, they're only 3 feet away from it, so it's looking like it wants to bolt, but it's not bolting. And I'm expecting this thing to move at any minute, but it's froze. It's as bad as I am. So I'm thinking, now's the time. I got to go. This thing, it's pissed. It's gonna hurt somebody. So I bolt, and as I turn to bolt, I tell my dad and my uncles, I say, hit the side of that mountain now, go. And they're gone. I mean, they're gone. Everything dropped, they were gone running. And I'm right behind them. I jump over the top of the ridge to go down the downward slope, and I hit running. But somewhere shortly after my legs hit, they went out from underneath me. I was so scared. I slowed down a little bit to raise the light on the lantern so I could see where we were going, so I could kind of, guide them too. And when I slowed down, they crashed into me, and we all went rolling. But as we're rolling, I'm trying to, at some point catch my legs out from underneath me so I can get up and start running. But I am so scared, and so just the adrenaline's pumping so bad at this point in time. I mean, it's almost indescribable. I mean, it's almost like you're being hypnotized. Like, you cannot get used to your limbs. Like, I could not get my legs out from underneath me for the longest to get up and run. I mean, we're just tumbling and rolling over each other. And I'm putting my hands on logs, and rocks, and trying to, stand up. And it just took me forever to get my composure and to get the fear out of me far enough to where I could get my legs, working and get to use something again. So finally we get down to the bottom of the hill, and, we're totally winded at this point. What the hell was that? What did we just see, Jeff, bro? What we see, Junior? And I'm like, you guys know what we seen, man. There's no doubt about what we seen. My Uncle Mike, he's like, well, we can't. If we tell anybody about seeing what we seen up there, people are gonna be out here hunting this thing. They're gonna be stalking this thing on Tom's land. Tom's gonna get mad at us and never let us fish here again. So they wanted me all to agree on a pact. They had my dad right off that. He agreed not to say nothing, because he liked to fish up there. Of course, he's not gonna say nothing if it's gonna risk him not being able to fish. So I went ahead and agreed. I'm still pretty young at this point, and still kind of naive as well, and this is my dad and my uncle, so I agreed to it too. Well, I'll keep it a secret. Worst decision I ever made. You know what I mean? My uncle Mike at some point, whatever, and talked to Tom and told him whatever he had told him. Um, and then we left. Well, I never went back. Neither did my dad or my uncle Rocky. My uncle Mike did go back the next day, and he took his pistol that he had got while he was in the military, and he went back and got our gear because everything was left up there that night except for the lantern. Everything was left behind that night. I mean, that's how bad of an ordeal this was. They had seen it, but it was almost like they needed me to confirm to them what we'd all seen so they could actually believe in their own minds what they seen. You know what I mean? But like I said, once you see one of these things, you can never unsee it ever, ever.
Right.
So we
Well,
never went back. At some point I got back to kicking it with my best friend, and we started fishing back down where we were fishing before when we were younger, Route 32. It's close to home, it's local, But by the time we went back there and started hearing, fishing that area, we had a place called the Slab, like a 60 by 60 concrete slab, and you could, it was so flat, you could, camp out and put air mattress down and put a tent and have a go at it. But on the left hand side, a lot of people like to fish and camp out on that side because it was grass and it was softer. But we started hearing stories from day one when we went back down there, because we took like a 2-year break from fishing that and went out and was fishing everywhere else in Ohio and Kentucky and Indiana. Me and my best friend fished we went everywhere. We fished everywhere we possibly could. Pay lakes, rivers. I mean, even mill creeks. So we're back down there, and we're, just trying to, see what's hitting and where, and, we started throughout because it was pretty much summertime when we went back down there and started fishing that. We started hearing stories about something crazy running through there and tearing people's campsites up and throwing rocks at them. And what they called him was the wild man. They said he's, looks like a wild man that just stripped down naked and went to the woods and, never shaved or did anything again. You know what I mean? Like, so, like I said, I already knew when I left Tom's, it was confirmed me what I was seeing all these years. It was almost like God had built me up for that experience, for when that happened. I mean, of course, nobody's going to handle a situation like that perfect. Like, cannot describe the fear that you get when you see one of these things. You feel so hopeless and helpless because you're out in the middle of nowhere. And if, God forbid, if one of these things wants to get you, it's going to get you because there's no way you're going to outrun one of these things. I mean, they're all muscle, pure muscle and fur, So
right.
we were really at that point we were really, and, like I said, my buddy had experienced that with me at Tides Creek. So when I told him about what happened at Tom's Mountain, he was pretty much a believer at that point. And we started to be really cautious about where we fished there. You know what I mean? So we never fished that left side where they was all talking about the stories of this wild man. We fished the right side where the woods were open, and we'd have an easy way out because there was a bike path on that side to where we could go right up and hit the bike path, and we could run and be to the truck and be done.
Right. Do you
So those
feel
are my experiences. They were pretty wild experiences. Like I said, I feel like it was a build up from 8 years old till the time I was 23. I'd had three incidents. Like looking back, I kind of feel like maybe, it was just fate for me, maybe a blessing and a curse as well, because, some people are lucky to have one incident in life, let alone two, and then to say three. I mean, that's pretty much, the way I look at it. It's a blessing. You know what I mean? But
do you feel like they're connected to you, or do you feel like all the signs were random?
no, I don't feel they were random at all. I don't. With the way that my life has gone and the way that I was even brought into this world, being an identical twin and losing my brother shortly after he was born, and the way my family, raised me and the way my aunts were, and saying, it's usually twins that are identical twins usually experience crazy, wild stuff in life. You know what I mean? So, it was called basically kind of like a build up to everything that went down in my life. You know what I mean? So, like I said, everything probably could have been handled a little bit better, but how do you handle an incident like that when you have one of these things and you don't have a clue, and then, at other times throwing rocks at you, and yet you don't see nothing. I mean, but you hear whoops and snoops, and then, to walk up on one that close, and to piss it off, that is a totally different level of fear.
Right.
I
Um,
do feel like I'm connected. I do feel like I'm connected to him. I don't know, like I said, being an identical twin, you know, I've always tried to be, I don't know, it's almost like, I feel like I was blessed. God took my brother, but he left me here to experience some things in life. I try to be a good man. I've been humbled from birth since I was old enough to find out that I had a brother and he passed. I try to be good to people. My mom and dad will tell you, he's a pure soul. He'll give everybody a shirt off his back. You know, I've always practiced, catch and release. I've never, I went hunting, but I've never shot anything. You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like all that put together, you know what I mean?
yeah.
For me
Okay.
being in this world, I feel like that maybe they were drawn to me and attracted to me because they knew, I wasn't that violent type of individual.
Yeah. Do you feel like they chased you down the mountain or?
I tell you what, I look back, when we look back and we bolted, and I looked over my shoulder, that thing was still crouched down like it was a deer in headlights, like it was froze as well. Like, I think this thing, we totally interrupted that whole schedule up there coming, in night fishing. I think maybe this thing come down there every night and, we disrupted the schedule because, nobody went up there and night fished at all because the fishing was so great in the day for bass. Nobody ever night fished. So I
Right.
feel
It
like he
seemed
went up
like
there
to
and just,
me he was confident enough to sneak down to the lake and do whatever he normally did and didn't
yeah,
expect to get caught like he did with you.
right. Yeah. Unlike, like I said, the first two, like I'm walking and one's stalking me and my sister. And then I get to the river at Todd's Creek there, and we're out there waiting. And all of a sudden, 15 minutes tops, I got rocks being done at me. Like, something had smelled us and come near us and told us to get up out of that area, like it's just crazy how the buildup was for me because in the beginning I got to see one, but it was only an outline of it. But you could see, you could put it together and know that it wasn't anything human. It was huge and immense. And then the second incident, being warned, pushed away, and then for the third one to walk up on top of one like that, 30, 40, yards tops. Like I was so you can only one can only estimate being in the dark and fishing, but I was so close. I could see every detail on that creature, and just as well as he could see everything on me. You know what I mean? Like the eyes were perfectly yellow, beautiful yellow, the glow that they gave off. You know, and then the
Hmm.
jet black pupils, and the way that the hair was layered. It wasn't matted. It didn't stink. You know, like other stories I hear, I don't know. There's so much water around that area, and it's just next to, you know, that park, state park, Miami Whitewater. There's so much water, hell, who knows? Maybe they go out and rinse their bodies off, when they get hot,
No,
in summer.
you're right. The one I saw, or both of the ones that I saw, were very clean looking. Their fur wasn't matted. That I didn't smell anything horrible. And the
Right?
ones the one I saw had the canines were really white. So it seemed like they took care of themselves.
Yeah, that's the feeling that I got as well. I
Yeah.
just, looking back on it all now, it was just wild that I got to have that many incidents in my life, you know. But I was never, I could never really, from being 8 to a grown man, one can't piece it together until the end. You got to build up your facts. So ever since this has happened, me and you done this initial interview, and you made a video, like, I've started to write a book about it. I'm even thinking
Mhm.
about maybe doing a kids book as well, like, and I got people that are behind me, you know, and pushing for me to do it, because I mean, it is what it is. There's a lot of naysayers out there, but like I said, not everybody's lying. Not everybody on this world is lying about what they see. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so I always address it. You can give my name. These are true incidents. There's no lie behind it. And that's why I let my name stand behind it.
Yeah.
So
I really appreciate you telling us all your encounters and taking the time out of your life to do that for us.
I appreciate it. And I appreciate you taking that time of your day for me too, so we can get
Yeah,
this out
man.
there for everybody.